Um, I'm kind of bouncing off an idea that I'm working through about robots and what we can do with um, helping kind of bridge some understanding for children or young adults who have grown up in a technological age and they're trying to understand how to bridge meaning between the process of learning and forgetting, and then learning and forgetting, and then thinking about the universe in some kind of metaphysical way. I'm not really sure how to do this yet because I think it's going to be a process where I have to almost go back to maybe the 70s and talk about how maybe back then currency was almost something that had a certain value. And it was very, very uncommon for people who are young in age, like maybe in the early 20s at the time, to have a lot of money. And even if they did, it was probably wrapped up in some kind of tradition where they probably didn't have very much easy access to it. Whereas now, almost 50, what, yeah, 50 years later, we have people who could be as young as 20 and they're already making a lot of money on the internet because they've found some efficient way of streamlining something, and that's it. They have a great income. And how the question could be like, how does that uh, almost like steep incline, I want to say, um, have some kind of influence on their life, but I almost want to ask, like, what impact did it have on them? Because to talk about influence is almost to say, um, did it actually meet your expectations, or did it change anything about you? Versus an impact is like, what was your sudden reaction? And then, I mean, we know that anything that is sort of outside of normal for us, we almost have a certain expectation that, oh my gosh, if I get this, and then you almost have like everything, like all my problems will be solved. But then when you get there, you have that high, like that emotional, like euphoria almost, and then you kind of gradually get back to a norm, and then life's normal again. So you don't know what that can do, what money can do rather. um, what I'm curious about now is fame, because what we understand is that if you kind of parallel that with young, um, I don't want to say young children, but celebrities who maybe um, gain some kind of fame in their teens or their early adolescence. Looking just back from maybe just 10 or 20 years ago, the I think the idea of the almost like adult age, or that kind of developmental transition almost into adulthood, is already very rife with a lot of change, a lot of anxiety, a lot of like, there's just already so much happening. So to have to deal with expectations around, to meet these standards for like celebrity, or to be able to meet these deadlines, or to meet what the world wants to expect to see of you, you have to create this image and you have to maintain it. And so some of these artists already may feel like, I'm already disillusioned. Like I came into this industry or like this art because I like my work and I like my style, and now I almost have to sell my style, and I can't really adapt to what I originally thought I could do. So we find this in a lot of areas of life. Sometimes you'll find it in politics, sometimes find it in education, where we almost have these almost like, they're almost like, it's hard to say that they're supports, it's hard to say that they're fences, it's hard to really know what to call them. But it's almost like, basically it's the same idea if you think of it in religion, is that we have these um, almost guidelines, is that we, when we're in this kind of bubble, we almost accept ourselves to stay like kind of within this lane, like don't drive, don't wander too much this way or veer off that way. And I don't really know how those almost came about, but I almost like that we have these moments where we can kind of revise that and just be like, well, we're kind of at a standstill and we don't really know how to move on from here. So how did we arrive, like this person arrive at this conclusion, or how did they know that, because I'm already going through a lot of trouble, I'm just going to ride the whole wave, like I'm just going to get on as much trouble as I can and just figure out why my emotions are what they are and why they're troubling for me. And then I know that there's somewhere in the universe where I can find balance if I realign, and I'll find the professional help that I need, and I'll be able to bounce back, because that's typically what people do. And that's true. Like if you look at a lot of young celebrities, that is what it is. And it's very hard when the media, or like anybody in outside of like that kind of immediate circle of who they are, like their family, maybe their friends, um, almost are always really curious, like, what are they doing in their life? And then we almost want to read it like it's not somebody who's an actual person that we're trying to understand, right? We almost think of it as like, I don't want to say a cartoon, but we almost have this kind of like curiosity about their life. And we want to know, like, tell us like how difficult your life is. But when they actually show us or tell us, we're just like, oh my gosh, why would they do that? But that's what we don't see, is that it is very, very difficult to be able to have real and true emotions and not be judged for them. And it's very hard to understand, like, how do I do this, like how do I do this safely? And nobody knows how to, because we're all learning together. So it's almost like, well, sorry, you're going to be the pioneer here. You're going to have to kind of learn and unlearn, and then we're going to kind of have to follow and figure out how to do this with you. And you see this now, especially with YouTubing being a thing, that started uh, maybe close to about 10 years ago, where it just became a phenomenon where a lot of people love to create content and then share it, and then they become influencers, where they have a lot of people following their ideas, and it becomes a trend. And then maybe because they're a little bit removed from a really, really big audience, it's a little easier for them to know how to deal with money and maybe deal with it safely. We don't know, because we don't have almost the stories that sometimes blow up, and they call them sensationalized stories, which means people embellish and elaborate a lot and maybe make up a little bit just to kind of make it look like, wow, guess what happened? And then, the next day something else, and you're like, really, in like a day? So it's almost like we kind of come to expect that maybe the stories are not 100% accurate. But just think about that, means what that does for a person, right? Like, it's very, very hard when you're trying to live like an authentic life and you're trying to live a really quiet life, but at the same time you like that people look up to you and that they admire what your skill and your talent is. And you want to make it look realistic, but you also want to show that the way I am is actually a skill. And being able to have humor and be able to memorize all the lines and like do whatever artistic ideas they have and they share are, is not something that we should almost think we can take lightly, right? So it's really hard to say what all this um, can kind of teach us moving forward, and how we can understand why maybe some families are um, not really sure, like if they have kids who are trying to uh, maybe I don't want to go to school, maybe I want to try YouTubing or like creating content and making money online, and then maybe I'll be successful, and you don't have to worry. So conservative families will think automatically, they'll go to like these case studies as it is, and they'll say, no, no, you're going to forget about your tradition. You're going to forget about the way of your parents and your past, and you'll get into like all this trouble. And no. So think of what that's like. It's like, I already have a talent. I already have a skill. You're not encouraging me. And already I feel like, now what? So it's very disheartening, and it's almost a way of saying, like, you're not allowing us to give back to the universe. You had children because there's so much to learn with children and they bring joy to your life. Try to think about how you want to let children bring joy into their own life, and how that can try to make you happy also.